Yeah, who run the world? Girls. Who run the world? Girls. Who run the world? Girls.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of She Worked Hard, Real Women, Real Life, a platform for us to tell our stories. I'm your host, Lauren Maley, and today we are welcoming my wonderful, beautiful, smart friend and therapist, Erin, to join us here today and talk to us about her journey of becoming a therapist. So with that, welcome, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good. So you have such an interesting story that I felt like we had to share with everybody because your journey to becoming in the profession where you are has been full of zigs and zags, and I think that's really interesting.
Definitely.
So talk to us about how and where your journey began.
So as you know, I'm a therapist. That's actually what I was trained as.
Yes.
That's not what I went into school for because, I mean, do we really know what we're going to do when we're 17 or 18 years old?
Thank you. We don't know.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like any good Midwestern girl, I'm like, I want to be a marine biologist. I think that was in like 80s, 90s.
I love that.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah, because,
you
landlocked.
You live
Sure.
by the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect job.
So it kind of morphed into, well, maybe a veterinarian.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because that's, Iowa.
Yeah. And you love animals.
I love animals.
Yes.
I love animals. They're just like my heart.
Yes.
And then I was introduced to organic chemistry.
Oh.
Yeah, I've never failed anything in my life. I failed
I feel like that's common.
organic chemistry.
Oh,
So I did a real quick pivot my sophomore year in college. And really it came down to what are my natural skills? What are my natural talents? What do I just do anyway? I'm like, everybody talks to me about their stuff.
Yes.
So it quickly dropped to organic chemistry and veered directly into psychology.
Okay, interesting. And so this was you as basically leaving high school, going into college. You were like, people like to talk to me. And so was it in college that you had decided, okay, I'm going to be a therapist? Is that when that came?
It was.
Okay.
It was. And, again, part of like a little side note, my other dream is, because I was a dancer through
I didn't
growing,
know that.
Yeah, growing up. And then I got to college and it was one of those like, oh, big fish, little pond. Like, oh, this is what real dancers are actually
Oh,
like.
wow. What kind of dancing?
Yeah, everything, ballet,
Cool.
tap, jazz,
Amazing.
point. Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, so I loved it, and in college, my dance teacher was like from the Royal Ballet.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I learned real quick what I was good at and what I was not so good at.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
so hard. That's when you get those realizations where you're like, okay, I'm going to do something different because this is too intense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so total tangent. I mean,
Yes.
I
Tell me.
do tangents.
Yes. Please tell
So
me.
total tangent. But this, for me, it's such a beautiful way of looking at things because instead of just like falling into regret, going into like, oh, well, I should have, right?
Yes.
Should have been doing all of these things my whole life. I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And so then it really comes down to in this, it's like failing organic chemistry.
Yeah.
I studied. It's not like I
Yes.
blew it off.
No.
And it's one of those pivotal moments where going into, okay, natural talents, natural skills. Everybody tells me everything anyway. Everybody asks my advice. I feel like I've was a therapist my entire life, and then it's like, well, might as well be trained.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
be a therapist.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I can speak from personal experience. I mean, you have changed my life for the better, truly, and you have this ability to help people, I think, see those different aspects, which is really powerful because not everybody has that gift. Some people are really good at organic chemistry and some people are really good with people. And so when you started in your profession as a therapist, was that your first job?
No, of course not.
Yes.
I think like any kiddo in the Midwest,
Yes.
we were babysitting
Yes.
way earlier than we had any business babysitting.
100%.
Right? I'm like,
When you're like 12, they're like, will you babysit our kids?
Yes.
Yeah, that happened to me too.
Correct.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always the older girls. Watch the kids.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely babysitting jobs. My first kind of like a formal job was I worked in a hair salon.
Yes.
On the summers, and actually started the summer after I graduated high school.
Okay.
And then I ended up going back, I think, all through college. And I mean, talk about perks.
Yes.
It was so much fun.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Do you get like free product and like all of the work?
All the things,
Yes.
all the things, it's like getting your hair done and slowly, and you know me, so this is just kind of what I do. It's like, oh, you're hired to answer the phones. And then pretty soon I was like doing the books, and pretty soon I was doing all the ordering.
Yes.
And then I would clean up, and then I think I was even shampooing people.
They're like, you can do it all.
Because I jump in,
Yes,
right?
totally. You help.
Yeah,
Yes.
I help. I jump in to
Yeah,
help. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, my hair salon days.
I love that. I love that. So after the hair salon, where did you go after that?
Then, that was while I was in college, and
Yes.
then I went to graduate school, and I painted houses for,
Stop it.
I can't even say a summer.
You're a house painter?
My family had bets on how long I would last in the heat in the Midwest,
love it.
painting houses.
Yes.
I actually lasted, the entire crew quit. I was the last person standing, and it was a month. I lasted a month
That's impressive.
painting houses.
I feel like that's very impressive. So in a
Yeah.
month, how many houses can you paint?
Oh, it was one house, and I am not kidding. I just went to visit my folks in May. That house, it's still, and it was this like salmon pinky color, and it's all flaking off. They've never repainted that house
Oh, no.
in 30 years. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, painted houses.
Was that the worst job that you've ever
No.
had? Okay.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I feel like you're debating
there's so
between
much
a few.
trauma. Like I've had so many jobs, right?
Yes.
Because of the nature of what I do,
Yes.
and kind of getting into after graduating from graduate school, and then
Yes.
trying to get into the workforce in Colorado,
Yes.
where there's a million therapists,
Yes.
because everybody wants to live in Colorado.
Yes.
And so had some real interesting jobs. It's like a part-time therapist working for a group home when I was making more money waitressing than I was
Wow. Yes.
as a part-time therapist.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
But, that's
So those were
interesting.
like the harder times when you had to kind of piece it all.
Those were the early years.
Yeah, the early
Yeah,
years.
The early years.
Absolutely. So talk to us about your shift into being a full-time therapist.
So I feel like I've kind of come full circle.
Yeah, tell me.
Because I started working actually in the hospitals. That was kind of my first like real
I didn't know
full-time job.
that.
Yeah. Inpatient psych units with kids and adolescents. And again, I was like, they didn't know I wasn't a resident because I was like 23.
Oh my gosh.
And so
You're so young.
I was so
Yes.
young, and working with teenagers, like that's like, it's a pretty,
Close.
very narrow age
Yes.
gap. So I worked on all the area hospitals, and that was quite intense.
Yes.
And after several years of that, I moved around. I was at Fort Logan, which like the kids unit doesn't even exist anymore. They closed it down.
Okay.
And then Children's Hospital and Denver Health, and then consultant with the Department of Youth Corrections. The company I was working with, they would joke, they're like, you're the first one on the beach. Like, put Erin in there. She'll trailblaze. Right? Yeah.
Hard.
So I got real burnt out,
Yes.
and I like didn't want to do direct care. So then I moved into more of a like consulting type of job around what services, and yeah, and then so lots of years in kind of social work, kind of behind the scenes, and then like I want something new and different.
Yeah. And so what was that something new and different?
So moved to DC.
Yes.
And I started, because of licensure and whatnot. I'm like,
Yes.
I mean, do you get licensed in Virginia or
It's
Maryland?
hard.
And I was tired. I was tired
Yes.
of, I really did want to change.
Yes.
So I actually got a job doing background investigations. So first I worked for a contracting company, and then I got on with the Office of Personal Management. So I became they call them special agents, and so, had the badge.
So cool.
Yeah, federal investigator. So I did that for several years, and then that job was, the best part of that job was doing TDYs. They sent us overseas because what we were doing for people need to get their background checks done to hold, secret, top secret,
Clearance.
SCI clearance.
Okay.
And so, in the DC area, most people held clearances.
Right.
And so, but the really fun part about that job is they would send us overseas to military bases
interesting.
to re-up people's, because you have to get your clearance done every 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would go over and do that. And you said TDY? What does that mean?
It's a temporary duty
Oh, a temporary
assignment.
duty. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So you would just go to these places for a short period of time and kind of move around.
Yeah.
So did you get to travel a lot?
Well, if it was overseas, it was for 6 weeks
Okay.
at a time, and then you could extend if it was in the States. I think it was only a couple weeks. So I did both. So I did domestic travel, and then I got to go to Japan. So I was in
Yes.
Japan for 6 weeks. I was in Heidelberg,
Cool.
Germany.
So cool.
At the end of September, I got to go to
Beautiful.
Oktoberfest.
Yes,
Yeah.
amazing. These are like bucket list
It
items
was.
checking off.
It was,
I
yeah.
love that. So in your time in the FBI, which is crazy to me because
Mm-hmm.
I know you as this Colorado woman running her own company here,
Mm-hmm.
and to think that you had this whole other life. What was it like for you working, I assume, with a bunch of, mostly men? Or was there other women in your...
Oh yeah,
There was.
Yeah,
What was it like? What was the environment like? Is it like work, or...
I mean, it's so different.
Yes.
Because, I jumped from being a background investigator to, that's when I got on with the Bureau, and I even had different jobs in the Bureau. It's like I made that transition into, personnel security, because they're like, oh, you know how to do this. So then I was hired by the Bureau. I was only in that job for 6 months. And then I became an intelligence analyst.
Of course you did.
And so,
I'm not
because of my
surprised.
background, so I actually worked for headquarters, the Crimes Against Children unit.
That's right.
So, but yeah, it's a pretty good mix. I don't think it's as, I'm probably lying. There's still a lot of men.
Yeah, right? Because when I think of the
There's-
FBI, I
there's
think of men, right?
Well, and
It's cool to meet a woman who was in the FBI. That's
yeah,
amazing.
But it really is a pretty good mix.
Yeah,
And,
cool.
a lot of people don't, when you think of the Bureau, like you think of the agents that
Yeah,
are out and about,
yes,
right?
you do.
There's so many support staffs.
Yes.
There's so many, there's financial analysts, and
Right.
like there's a photographer, there's like
Yes,
a nurse.
things you would never
There's-
think of.
Right. I
Yes.
mean, all the like we've got mechanics. We've
Yes.
got like
Cool.
it's like people doing surveillance. We have
Yes.
so there's so many different
Facets,
opportunities and
opportunities.
positions.
Cool.
Yeah.
So in the Crimes Against Children unit, which is such an intense name, obviously you're doing extremely admirable work there. I'm sure that was extremely emotionally taxing for you. Is that when you figured out that you had psychic abilities, and that's why you had to kind of remove yourself from that position?
I was really late to the game figuring
Okay.
out that I was intuitive and that I had
Yes.
psychic abilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. It's a real talent and gift
yeah.
to people like me. So, but I can imagine that with that job, that had to be incredibly difficult.
It's really difficult, and again, when you are intuitive, when you are psychic, and a lot of people are, they really are.
Yeah.
And when you are empathetic, it's like you start building up defense mechanisms. And so even when I was working with, kids and adolescents,
Yes.
I started getting like a real dark sense of humor.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
How do you not?
Right.
Yes.
And, it's, you have to compartmentalize things and you
Yes.
got to kind of disassociate from,
Yes.
in order to be able to still work, right? It's, and it's funny because now these are all the things that I help people see, recognize, and like integrate back in instead of like, oh no, I have a feeling I'm going to deal with that later.
Yes.
La, 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 la. But I did that for years.
I feel like you almost had to with
Yeah.
such an emotionally taxing
Right.
position. I mean, you would probably go to work every day and leave just feeling like 1,000 pounds of weight on your heart.
I mean, I joke, like, I got paid to dissociate. I
Yes.
really did.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Because it's hard. Not that you can't, but it's hard to be able to actually be in your body and be present when you're dealing with, like, horrors.
Yeah, you're dealing-
true horrors.
true horrors, the true
Right.
worst of humanity, and trying to do that for employment, trying to
Right.
make the world a better place and yet still trying to stay intact with your heart. Like, it
Right.
sounds incredibly difficult. So you have this job, which was your dream job, right? Because you're here to, help so many people.
Right.
What went on after that?
So I had just, because analysts go to Quantico like agents do. Like
This is
all
like the movies.
I know.
Like,
I
you
know.
go to Quantico.
You go to Quantico.
That's so cool.
And training is, I mean, it's extensive. I think it's like 10 weeks.
Wow.
It's like all summer long.
Wow.
But, but analysts, like, we're not running, we're not shooting,
Okay,
we're not doing
okay.
like all the Silence of the Lambs, like training, right?
Terrifying.
But we're in the classroom, learning all the
Yes.
computer programs. But we're hearing, because the gun range is not that far, and so it's like all the shots and you just kind of get used to it. And the cool thing about Quantico, it's just interesting, is there's like a fake city built, so they can do trainings. So there's like all these it's almost like a movie set. So there's like storefronts, but in some of the storefront, like there is a sandwich shop, and there's there's a bank, there's all these different things, but our classrooms are on the other side of that. So like you walk through that every day, and so you need to know when they're running drills and trainings.
Wow,
So when you
interesting.
can come and go.
Super, super
Yeah,
interesting.
so that part's kind of fun.
That is fun. So it's like a fake city, but it's kind of parts of it are real.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there are a couple, like definitely some food shops. And
Cool. Really cool. So when you were there, how long did you do this job?
Oh, sorry, I get off track.
No, you weren't. I wanted to hear about Quantico.
All the
So
things.
interesting.
All the
Yeah.
things. So I had just gotten through training
Okay.
and started my job, and I considered it my dream job because I'm working at headquarters in
Yes.
DC.
I mean, come on.
It's
amazing.
I met the director. It's just
Yes.
like,
Wow. Like, I hit it big time. I made it.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Absolutely.
And there was lots of travel with this job.
Cool.
And so, I was going to be like going to Bali. I was going to be, I was married at the time,
Okay.
and my partner was also in the bureau. That's why we moved to DC in the first place.
I see.
And, he was just kind of over it.
Okay.
And it's very hard to get back to Denver. it's Denver. Everybody wants to be.
And everybody still wants to be here.
Right. Everybody
Everyone
wants to
I
be
know
in
wants
Denver.
to live here. Yes.
And so when the opportunity comes up to put in for a
Yes.
transfer, I was still in Quantico. You know, it's like, put in for it. I'm like, but I'm not even, well, we don't know if we're going to get it. Well, we got it.
You
Like,
got it.
I think I started in July after done training, like in October. It's like, hey, guess what?
We're moving.
You're going back to Denver. It's like, I've only been here a couple months. So by the, I think February of the next year, come back to Denver. And again, interesting because working at headquarters and then transitioning to a field office.
Okay.
So that was a whole different
Interesting.
thing.
A whole different ballgame.
Yeah. So then they put me in, I worked as an analyst in public corruption and civil rights for a little bit. That does include human trafficking, adult human trafficking. And then I was able to transition back into crimes against children because, again, that was my specialty. And then I worked in crimes against children for several years.
Okay, so you're back in Denver at this point, and you are probably feeling like you wanted to transition to something maybe less emotionally taxing, or what pushed you out of that realm?
So coming back to Denver was my foray into, I just always kind of know things. And so I actually went to see a psychic.
Yes.
Because one of my friends
I love
is like,
this kind of
I met
stuff.
this amazing psychic.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yes,
Because I've always
tell me
been
more.
like super interested. I bought my first pack of tarot cards like back in 2000.
Yes.
And this is like 2011. And so I'm like, oh, yeah. So
Give me more.
Right? So I went to see a psychic and it just blew my mind. And then
What did she say? Did she say
I
you
don't
need
even
to be doing this?
remember at that point, but it just was exciting.
Yes.
And, she's probably like, you're incredibly psychic.
Yes.
And, it's one of those like, am I?
Yes.
And so she started doing workshops and, it's doing classes on how to build your intuition.
Cool.
And so I did that for the next year or so. And, I got my old deck tarot cards back
Yes.
out. And then it was a whole different ball game.
Interesting.
And so in 2012, that was actually a pretty short period of time. In 2012, I founded Do What Resonates to do readings. So I started just doing readings on the side. So that's really how I started balancing out how intense the violent crimes and the crimes against children and all the things that I was doing for the Bureau at work. But then I was working all the time. Then I would come home and I would do some readings. But that was a really nice balance. And then I started, getting some private clients. I started, doing therapy again. And one kind of, I don't want to say push the other one out, but, the more that I realized, I'm very sensitive, I'm very intuitive, this is quite traumatizing.
Yes.
I'm having to do a lot of work
Yes.
to lots of massages, lots
Yes.
of readings, lots of clearing.
Yes.
And there was some illnesses coming up, so even my body was like,
Interesting.
please stop doing
Rejecting that. Yeah.
Yeah, so in 2015, and I was working, I'm not kidding, I was working all the time. I was working on the weekends. I
much.
was working all the time. So then I quit the Bureau and then I jumped into private, I call it private practice. It was mostly readings at that point.
Yes.
And then it's really, then I was taking more and more and more therapy clients. And COVID 2020, I just shut down my reading business. And I was like, you know what? I really want to use my intuition and my skills and my gifts to help people heal. I don't want to do, not that it wasn't fun, but I'd get a lot of do a Halloween party and do bachelorette parties and ooh, this is fun.
Yes.
And they weren't prepared when I would tell them when I'm like, ooh, it looks like you're really going through it. It's like, you don't want to start crying. You don't want a therapy session.
At your Halloween party.
At a Halloween party
Yeah.
or at a bachelorette
Yes,
party. Right.
that totally makes
And
sense.
so that's when I was like, oh yeah, like I want to actually continue to see clients to
Yes.
help them like really grow and evolve.
I love that. I feel like you found a happy medium between the two. One is so intense and,
Right.
Of course is amazing work, but it's just so emotionally heavy. And then the other side is almost too light. Like, oh, here we're at this party, we're having fun. And like, yeah, and like we're drinking and like all these things, right? I'm sure you
Right.
have some drinking people who are just obnoxious or whatever. And so knowing you and knowing your gifts, like, that certainly isn't your highest and best use as a human being.
Right.
So it's so cool now to see you.
Right.
I know you where you are now, which is you have
Mm-hmm.
this really successful business and you have so many spiritual gifts that are so amazing and life-changing, truly. And so I wondered if you would talk to us a little bit about what you do with the energy clearings, because
Sure.
it's so powerful and I don't think people know enough about it.
Right.
And kind of the different types of energy clearings that you can do and how it can help you.
Yeah.
So will you talk to us about it?
Yeah. Just like you, I'm a lifelong learner. And so I consume information.
Yes.
So especially with the energy work.
Yes.
So I've got a lot of different certifications and things
Yes.
that I do. I do EMDR. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because the energy work that I have now learned that, you know all about,
Yes.
but I'll tell these guys about.
Yes.
I feel like it's similar. It really like gets down to the core of things, but it's not as harsh.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So what I have combined with my therapy practice, it's called ThetaHealing. It's a technique. It's a Theta Healing technique, and it's a very specific technique that is taught by the folks that founded it, and it's a meditation technique that helps us connect to like creator, to the molecules of creation, right? To the
Yes.
moment
Yes.
of creation. It's kind of like that quantum, like going up to the like, if things can be created in a second, they can also be pulled and discreated in a second.
Yes.
And the beauty of theta healing is, because I know Reiki too,
Yes,
right? So,
yes.
but the beauty of theta healing is it doesn't have to come through my cells or through my my patterns, my programs out my hands, right,
Yes.
to somebody else. I'm just facilitating, right? So I'm watching those creator, whatever, source, universe, whatever you want to
Whatever you
say,
believe,
right?
yes.
Whatever you believe. I'm watching like that energy work with the client's body, right?
Yes.
And because like it's your body
Yes.
that is ready to let go, it's ready to heal, and so I'm facilitating through this very specific meditation technique.
Yes.
So like I'm never gonna promise like I'm a healer, I can do these things, because like I'm not sure what your body is ready to accept, ready to
Right.
let go
To
of,
receive.
ready to receive.
Right.
And but that really combines, because you do need to be intuitive, right?
Yes.
And the woman that founded this whole thing, Vianna Steibel, she teaches everyone, like there's a very specific meditation that walks you up, and she teaches people how to do this, and it's amazing. And I've now learned, I've done the teacher training, so now I can teach it as well. So
Cool.
that's exciting.
It was really exciting.
Yeah.
And for anyone who hasn't done it I am new to this world, and it's really healing and life-changing, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's just such an unexplainable experience, the theta healing, when you're the guide and you can feel those things kind of washing over you. And if you do any kind of meditation or you're a spiritual person, I think that you're open to those things and that it's very healing. Even if you're not, I think you can still get there.
Right.
But from my personal experience, it's just been very healing and, like I said, powerful is kind of the best word that I can think of. Like, it almost makes you feel like you're not alone and that there is something bigger out there. And I know that sounds a little bit out there to say, but that's how it made me feel, which is powerful.
And that really is the only requirement
Yeah.
of, it's called theta healing because with this particular meditation technique, I go into a theta brainwave state. And that's the state where we dream. That's the state where we can, when we meditate, that we're trying to get to access our subconscious, right?
Yes.
And once we're in that theta, once I go up into the theta state, you know, there's like energetically,
Yes.
you go up into that theta brainwave state as well.
That makes sense.
And really the only requirement of doing theta healing is believing that, like believing in energy, believing that there is, you know, it has nothing to do with religion.
Yes.
Right? It's not affiliated with religion, but believing in that source energy. Because if you don't, like, that's fine. It's just
fine.
not gonna,
Right.
you're not gonna be open to
To the possibility of
Right.
receiving anything.
Right, and our minds, and that's why it kind of feels like magic. It's not magic, obviously.
It does kind of feel like magic,
But it
though.
kind of,
Yeah.
right, it's hard to explain until you
Yes.
have that inner
And
experience
that's 100% right.
doing it. But again, it's about facilitating your body to heal.
Absolutely.
It's about facilitating your body to recognize, oh, here's this belief. This is not serving me. It thinks it's serving me.
Yes.
It's trying to protect me.
Yes.
It's doing a real bad job
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, go away.
Right. So being able to see it in your mind is like, oh, cool, I don't need that anymore.
Yes.
And then it's able to release
Absolutely.
and then replace it with things that feel more expansive, that are more in alignment with your authentic self.
Absolutely. When you look back on this amazing career that you've had and that you've built for yourself, it's very impressive. There are a lot of things that you can point to from the outside looking in and say, wow, like she must be really proud of that. But when you think of it yourself, what are you most proud of?
I really enjoy continuing to grow and change
Yes.
and up level, and and I'm not even sure if you know this, like I even have a side gig that I do. Do you know this?
No, what is it?
Because like obviously like I have my private practice. I work for a friend of mine who's she's a lawyer, and so I'm her lead investigator for her law firm.
Of course you are.
Right?
I feel like you're an overachiever. Can we just talk about that?
Well, but it really engages
amazing.
that, like my
Yes, that
investigative,
part of you,
that
yes.
part of me, and you know, it's the bias firm, and she's amazing, and we
Cool.
focus. It's all car stuff. It's lemon law.
Cool.
And so it's all consumer advocacy. So it's
Interesting.
still helping.
That
it's
is, that
still,
is.
you know, like.
It's using that part of your brain that is that investigator in you.
Right.
That hasn't gone away and never
Right.
will.
Right.
And I love that. That's really cool.
Right. So I'm again kind of going back to what I'm proud of.
Yes.
You know, like I started doing that I think last September. So
Yes.
I'm really open to different opportunities, learning different things, rolling it in. You know, anybody who's known me since, you know, I started my website, they can point to first it was tarot, and then you did hand analysis, and then you did, like, I've done
Yes.
all these different things, and I continue to just kind of grow and change
Evolve.
and tweak and evolve, and yeah.
Like we're all supposed to. We're all
Right.
supposed to change.
Right, yeah,
Yes.
like getting rid of stuff that isn't in alignment anymore.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean it won't always be. Like
Right.
I might do readings again one
Yeah,
day.
exactly.
I'm not going to say never.
Exactly. If it feels good,
Right.
do it.
Yeah.
So, when you are leaving us, as wise as you are, will you leave us with some wonderful words of wisdom, please?
Oh, words of wisdom. Just be compassionate with yourself,
love that.
right?
Yes.
Like, everything that we've ever experienced, every decision we've ever made, we can learn from it, we can grow from it. It doesn't have to define us.
Yes.
And we can always make new choices, new decisions. We can completely change our entire lives because what's showing up today is because of decisions we've made in the past. And so
Yes.
the future is not set. We can control and change that. So I want to give people hope.
I love that. I love that message because it's 100% true. And I think we're all so incredibly hard on ourselves.
Right.
And that is a message that needs to be talked about more, for sure. So thank you so much for coming and talking with us today and sharing your story. It's such an impressive story and it's such a unique journey, which I think is super interesting. And I think that, through your practice, you are helping so many people, including myself, and I'm forever grateful for that. And I just think that your talents and your abilities are kind of outside of this world, which I think are really interesting, and you don't meet a lot of people like you. So thank you again for just being so open and brave to share your story. I know it's not easy to come out here and talk about these things, but it certainly is a little bit fun.
It is.
And with that, I just wanted to, again, say thank you, and for people to please remember that she didn't get lucky, she worked hard.
Girls, we run this mother.